So today we're diving into a book that really pushes back against the official story of Pakistan, the one a lot of people learn in school. It offers up a pretty bold and, yeah, sometimes uncomfortable counter-narrative. And that really gets to the heart of it. What if everything you learned was just one version of events? This is the core question the book asks, really pushing us to think differently about how a nation tells its own story. Okay, so let's get into it. The book is called Pakistan Lost, and it's by Shahzad Riaz. And look, it's not your typical dry history book. It's written as a counter-narrative, aimed at a new generation, really designed to make you stop and question the very foundations of what you've been taught. So where does the book even start? Well, it goes right for the jugular, questioning the very foundation of Pakistan's national story. And it starts with a date that every single Pakistani knows. But as the author points out, what it originally stood for might not be what you think.
Now, this is where it gets really interesting. The book claims there's been a kind of collective memory shift. For a long time, March 23rd was actually celebrated as Republic Day to honor the 1956 Constitution. But the author argues that as dictators came and went, tossing out constitutions, that memory was deliberately scrubbed away and replaced, connecting the holiday instead to the 1940 Lahore Resolution.
And get this, if you actually look at the original text of that 1940 resolution, the book hammers home the fact that it uses plurals, units, regions, states. The argument here is that the original vision was never for one single centralized country, but for a federation of autonomous, sovereign states. A vision that, the author claims, was quietly changed behind the scenes. And this whole conflict, between a single top-down state and a collection of unique cultures leads right into what the book calls Pakistan's big ongoing identity crisis. The book uses this incredible term to basically describe a fundamental problem from day one. The state tried to create an identity, a Pakistani, from the top down, usually based on a pretty narrow view of religion and the Urdu language. And in doing so, it argues, this trampled on the rich, ancient identities that were already there, the Sindhis, Punjabis, Pashtuns, Baloch, and so many others. And the thing is, the book shows this wasn't just a one-off thing. It was a pattern, a sustained policy. From declaring Urdu as the only national language, which sparked huge protests, to literally erasing provincial lines with the one-unit scheme, all the way to recent attempts to write regional heroes out of the textbooks. It's all presented as part of this long, troubling history of sacrificing diversity for a state-mandated unity. That powerful quote, it comes from the tragic story of a man named Jan Mandal. He was a Hindu Dalit leader, a founding father, who became the country's very first law minister. But just 3 years in, he resigned, totally heartbroken and disillusioned. His resignation letter, which the book quotes, is just this bone-chilling warning that the country was becoming dangerous, not just for minorities, but for its Muslim citizens too. So all these issues, all this tension, where did it all lead? Well, the book argues it didn't just fade away. Instead, it all boiled over and culminated in the nation's biggest trauma, the 1971 war and the birth of Bangladesh. See, according to the book, the breakup of Pakistan wasn't some sudden shock. It was the totally predictable outcome of decades of deep-seated grievances. East Pakistan's resources were used to build up West Pakistan. Their language was brutally suppressed, they were shut out of political power, and when a massive cyclone hit in 1970, killing hundreds of thousands, the state's response was just cold, brutal apathy. And to show just how bad things got, the book shares this absolutely gut-wrenching story. It connects that state neglect to this openly racist and violent rhetoric. After hearing a West Pakistani general say those horrifying words, Major Mushtaq, a Bengali officer, simply walked to the bathroom and took his own life. It's presented as this tragic symbol of a dream that had completely shattered. Okay, so moving on, the book also dives into the decades of political messiness that followed. But here's where it really flips the script. It argues that right alongside all that chaos, there is a powerful and often forgotten history of people fighting back. I mean, think about the 1990s. The book describes it as a game of political musical chairs. A democratic government would get elected, but before it could even get its feet on the ground, it would get hit with corruption charges, no confidence votes, and then boom, dismissed by the president. It was a cycle that just repeated over and over, never letting democracy actually grow roots. But, and this is a huge but, the book makes a powerful counterpoint. The narrative we often hear is that people were passive, but the book is literally dedicated to the resistance. It shines a light on these massive popular movements against military dictators,
arguing that this legacy of defiance, of people taking to the streets, is a core and really beautiful part of the country's story.
All right, so after walking us through this really tough, often bleak history of wrong turns and missed opportunities, you'd think the book would end on a pretty down note, right? Well, not exactly. It wraps up with the surprising and powerful dose of hope. And that brings us to the ultimate question, the one in the title. After everything, is the country really lost? The book tackles it head on, and its answer is a resounding and maybe surprising no. And the final argument is a total mind bender. It basically says that the massive scale of Pakistan's problems is also its greatest strength. Because the problems are so big, millions of kids out of school, for example, it means that even a small, targeted solution, like a microfinance program, can have this huge, outsized impact, positively affecting 7 to 8 million families. The brokenness itself creates an incredible opportunity for change. So in the end, the message of Pakistan Lost is that real patriotism isn't about blindly accepting the official story. It's about having the guts to ask the hard questions about the past so you can build a better future. And that really leaves us with one final thought. What part of the story are you going to question next?